Hello and welcome to Piano with Georgia. I'm Georgia. In today's video, we're going to do something that I have not done before. In the classical music world, we would call this a master class in that there's a student who would be playing for a teacher, and the teacher would be making comments and asking the student to stop and start. Meanwhile, there's an audience who is listening and learning from what the student and the teacher are doing together. Well, here on YouTube, that is called a reaction video. The video that I have found that I think is especially meaningful to me is Annie Lennox playing the Moonlight Sonata. Now, this is one of my favorite popular artists, and of course, one of my favorite composers. Annie Lennox actually was the first music video I ever saw in my entire life when videos were a brand new thing, kind of dating myself here, but that's okay. So videos were a brand new thing. I did not even have MTV on my local cable channels. HBO used to, in between their movies, do this thing called video jukebox, which I loved. The very first video I ever saw was Here Comes the Rain Again, with Annie Lennox, of course, singing in her amazing voice, and she was part of the Eurythmics at that time. So when I found this video of her playing a classical piano piece, I just could not wait to see it. And I actually haven't watched it yet. I thought I'd do that together here with you. And I just have to say, even before I watch anything on this video, the fact that she would be playing a classical piece of music, which takes a lot of time and technique to learn and play through, it just goes to show what a complete, well-rounded music lover and musician that she is. So welcome to my first ever reaction video. Let's dive in and let's see what we can learn. Button here.
Well, I've wanted to play the Moonlight Sonata perfectly for quite a long time. I've been practicing a great deal because it doesn't seem that I've ever managed to play it perfectly, but I'm gonna try. So just for the record, here we go.
Now that already, I have to just say, her preface, it just speaks so much to something that is so prevalent in classical music, and that is perfectionism, this feeling that we dishonor the composer or we're not good enough if we make a single mistake. Well, we're human, and so I just want to tell you, don't worry, if you make a mistake, the music will still come through. It'll still be beautiful, as I'm sure her playing will be here. I'm just going to pause it. That was kind of the opening. She does a fantastic job of allowing for a lot of dynamic range. Also, you can tell she's such a professional performer in general. Her body language is fantastic. She's letting her torso move with the music. So the music is an extension of her body, and the sounds just look like they are at one with her. So let's go ahead and keep going. Again, a really good example of a beautiful phrase. You could hear her starting kind of softly, and then she had a point where she had planned to build to, and then she kind of comes back away from it. She's also paying attention to her melodies, the bum, ba bum. Those are standing out a bit louder than the other notes around it. So I know as a listener that that's what she is intending for me to hear. As I watch her right hand, I can't really see her left hand, unfortunately. As I watch her right hand through the introduction, I noticed she used kind of the fingering 1, 3, 5 to keep her hand position a little more closed. I did think if she could add like a little bit of wrist motion, so just kind of a little bit like this, that fingering would be totally fine, but it would just help her, I think, to have that really gentle sound. And of course, it would just also feel really good to have that slight bit of just wrist rotation going on. Oh, page turns are so hard. Oof. Another beautiful example of melodic phrasing. That page turn slowed her down just a tad, and she was able to get that hand up and turn it. Page turns, they're just a thing. Usually what I will do with a page turn is I will look for an opportunity either before or after where there's just something that's kind of standing still, and I can memorize even just a couple of measures so that maybe while left hand, for example, has a big whole note, keep the right hand going and reach up there and flick that page, and you can use the pedal to keep the sound going so it doesn't sound like your left hand is missing, but you can also get that page turned without it interrupting your emotional flow or the rhythmic flow. Now right there, it looked like her left hand was playing maybe some different intervals. In the original, it's octaves, and I'm wondering if she may have a particularly small hand, that those larger intervals are difficult for her to stay relaxed and reach. If that's the case, then I want to commend her for making that adjustment. It is always better to make a very, very small adjustment that honestly will be insignificant to the sound so that you don't strain your hands. Hands, we get one set. You want to take care of them. So again, she's just such an emotional player. The just feeling that she's bringing to her classical piece here is wonderful. Really great phrasing, and every melody note, I can hear it. I do think some of those right hand little inner buttas that are going underneath the melody, I think she could get them even softer, and then her melody could be even more expressive, because the softer you can keep the accompaniment, the more dynamic range you have to mess around with all those melody notes. Okay, now I want to rewind it just a tiny bit because I heard a mistake. It was not a note accuracy mistake. She's extremely accurate in her playing. I heard a teeny tiny little rhythmic bobble because she was doing some inversions, and it just took her a split second of extra time to get her next position kind of set up. Now, if you didn't even hear that, that's awesome because it goes to show that a small mistake is not even going to be noticed by most people. So let's go back and I want you to just hear it as an example of a good mistake. There are such things as good mistakes. Here it comes, right here. Did you hear it? She had to just glance down at the piano to just make sure her thumb switched to the correct note that was coming up. Again, just a tiny, tiny thing that doesn't matter. Her expression is so much more important. And also, a lot of times, it's more important to take a teensy tiny bit of time and play the correct note versus not breaking the rhythm at all and playing something that really does stand out as a mistake that people, sometimes there are mistakes that everybody notices. I just commend her as such a well-rounded musician that she is reading from sheet music, the printed page, as she's playing at the same time. And as you're reading music and you're playing and there's position shifts, it's very common to have trouble with your eyes needing to flip back and forth between the music and the piano. What you need to do if there's a specific spot that you need to have your eyes on the piano or a specific spot on your music that you need to look at to play it accurately, make a plan. Just choreograph your eyes so your eyes know where to go. The biggest problem with looking back and forth between music and your hands is when you look back up at the music, your eyes feel lost and they don't know where to go. Or when you look down at your hands, you kind of forget where you are for a second. So it's just like that page turn. You make a plan and then you practice the choreography of where your eyes need to be when. Right there, I'm sorry to stop it again so soon. I noticed she had those repeated notes in her right hand. She's playing them with finger 5 is the melody part. And that dun, da, da. She had 3 different dynamic levels for those 3 repeated notes. That is how you keep repeated notes staying interesting. Nice build. Beautiful phrasing. Something distracted her. Now, these arpeggios are a famously challenging part for a lot of students because it's such a change up of what you're doing. And it seems like the first time you look at it, like these are just a whole bunch of random notes and your hands are having to move. They are just arpeggios. And if you explore them just a little bit more closely, you can find that there's only 3 or 4 different pitches that your fingers have to actually play. And the rest of it is just reorganizing or using inversions of those chords to make these arpeggios turn into a beautiful piece of music. I noticed the shifts are definitely the things that are the hardest for her. They're just things where I noticed maybe her hand will be moving so gracefully and smoothly, and then it'll sort of like do a little kind of jarring move. So that's just telling me that, wow, she had to work hard to get that move to come in on time. As she continues to play this piece, I think those moves are just going to become part of her. This is probably another example of why so many classical musicians, besides just the tradition and being required to do it, some classical musicians do prefer to memorize the music because having your eyes on your hands the entire time is just so helpful whenever you're moving. So let's get back to it. I love her facial expressions through this. A smile. It is so refreshing to see a smile from someone playing a classical piece of music. Some people usually look so serious. So using just your entire expressive self, she looks like she's just so joyful overplaying those arpeggios. If I were to guess, I would think this part was really hard, and she really spent a lot of time getting this accuracy here, and she's just really happy that it went so well, especially on a video, because when you push that little red button to record yourself, whew, it's kind of a big deal and harder to maintain your sense of composure. Now, I mean, Annie Lennox, she's like had so much performing experience. I have no idea how many hours she must have spent on stage in front of people just doing the thing that makes you feel vulnerable. So anyway, her arpeggios, one other thing that I do notice, just a quick little expressive thing, as she's moving through her arpeggios, sometimes her stronger fingers on her hand will play just a little bit louder than the others. And I think those are not intentionally planned accents. I think they're coming in because of the different strengths of our different fingers. So right there, I might suggest that she just keep her fingers on the keys as she moves, maybe a split second before she plays it, have her finger touching the key, and that way she can really control the dynamic level of every note and make them sound a little bit more smooth instead of like having little accents along the way. Way to go, Annie. So I'm going to go ahead and rewind it a little bit just to listen to that ending one more time. I believe she makes a few little modifications in this particular version of the Moonlight Sonata. Again, her hands don't look particularly small, but at the same time, you can make modifications for difficulty as well. I think it is so much better to give yourself the opportunity to play one of these beautiful, huge pinnacles of classical music and modify it so that it works for you. You don't have to be a professional pianist to be able to play these wonderful classical pieces of literature. There are many arrangements of them out there, and I am not a purist that thinks that you should only play it if you can play it exactly the way that Beethoven wrote it. I think the teacher side of Beethoven would modify it himself to work for his students. He did that all the time with his compositions, and he would write compositions that were on the easier side. So anyway, I think it's wonderful that she's playing a version of this sonata that she feels very confident with. And let's just listen to her dynamics here as she brings it to a close. Looks so triumphant and proud, which she should be. And now she's gonna go over and see the bird that's been at her window. I did notice that sound in the background, and I just assumed it was probably someone in her house walking around. Maybe that's certainly what it would be in my home, but it was this little bird at her window, which is just kind of wonderful. So I am so happy that we had this opportunity to watch such an iconic musician play this wonderful piece, and her willingness to share it with us and the world out here on YouTube is amazing and should give you the confidence to be able to take risks and play some of the music that you love, even if it's only in your own living room, home. That is okay. It's all good. So thank you, Annie Lennox, for playing for us. And thank you for watching me make my first ever reaction video. I hope that this has been enjoyable for you, and I really hope that you've been able to learn a lot. Things that you can apply if you decide to try this piece, but also things that you can apply to other pieces that you love. So thank you so much for watching, and please like and subscribe and leave a comment for me and let me know what you think of the reaction video.